Hey guys, welcome back. Mark here, and if you remember where we left off in lesson 3, we added controls to our program, to our dice roller program, and then we went through, we disabled some of those controls so we can push data to it when we want to. And we kind of set up our event handlers or our subroutines to go ahead and handle quit and about. So in lesson 4, what I want to do is let's go ahead and kind of keep moving forward with the program, but let's build our event handlers, because we're going to use these event handlers for 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 20, and 100-sided dice. So we're going to use those all the way through. So one of the first things I think we'll do is let's go ahead and let's run this so we see where we left off. So here we have our controls. We're not going to click on any of them because we know they won't do anything. But we did disable the number of dice, and we disabled result and the text editor because we want to push information to that. We don't want people entering information into that. So the first thing is number of dice. This should really start at 1 for us, because the lowest amount of dice you can roll is 1. And I think we're going to set the max at 99, which we'll do in our subroutine. So let's go ahead and put our information into that first box, which is going to be D4 count. So if you remember, we set that or initialize that variable to 1 from the get-go. So let's go ahead and put that data in there. So let's get the handle to that text box. And so that's going to be our basically text box D4. And then we're going to pass in our D4 count. So whatever that's set to, that's what we're passing to that text box, or that's what we're setting that text box as. So if we save and run this now, it should say number 1, which it does, number 1, perfect. And then we're going to use our up-down arrows to control that. So we need to start building out those subroutines. But before we do that, I also want us to go ahead and make about do something. Right now it doesn't do anything. If you remember, we disabled that, or we didn't disable it, we just never finished the code for it. So what I do have is I actually have a site, a Google site, that actually points to that. And so we're going to run through and put in that link. So let's go ahead in here. We need a string variable. This is going to be a local variable to this subroutine, and it's going to be URL equals, and then I copied and pasted this URL because it's so long I don't want to have to type it out, but Terra Nova Studios Dice Roller 2. That Terra Nova Studios is a little Gmail name that my brother and I call each other. Terra Nova Studios, when we're building a project together, just kind of goofing around. We've always had that in there. We always thought it sounded cool to us. But so now we have URL equaling, or our variable equals that URL. So, excuse me. So what we're going to do now is do run. And we're going to use the run DLL32.exe. So run DLL32.exe. And then URL.dll, comma. And then we're going to use the file protocol handler, then space, semicolon, and then we're going to pass in our URL, or our variable that we have. That could be anything. I mean, I did URL just because it's clear what it is. You're going to a website, but this could be, you know, my awesome domain. It could be the rabbit is green, as long as it holds a string, right? It doesn't matter what it is. So if we save this, run it, go to help and about, it should pop up with the website, which it is. It's loading. There we go. So Dice Roller 2.0, it's the old version, but I'm going to update this for the new version, and I'll have both versions of the Dice Roller. That should go to my Dropbox, but I'll have all this information up there, and I'll update it later on. But here you can see this will be the finished version of our Dice Roller. Like I said, I've built this before, but now we're optimizing it, and I really wanted to teach the optimized code for those of you that are starting out there. If I knew to program this way from the get-go, I think I'd be a little bit further ahead just because it's cleaner. But you're always learning, right? That's what coding is. Coding is you're always learning something. So I'm going to close this and let's go back to our program. So that works perfect. So now I want us to go ahead and start building our subroutines for the modifiers here, plus and minus. Also, we need to build the subroutines for our buttons. So I think we'll do that first. So our BMP button event handlers, our bitmap buttons. So let's close this. And we're going to put these right below our menu stuff. So the first one we're going to have is going to be our subroutine for the BMP button event handler. So sub, might help if I select this. There we go. Sub. So, and then it's going to be BMP, and I'm going to use our Intellisense, and then handle. And if you guys watched my video on subroutine event handlers, I explain all of this, but I'll kind of do that as we go through. So here's our subroutine. We're passing in handle, and the handle we're passing in is really this entire handle here. So hashtag dr.std. Well, here it'll be actually dr.btnd4 up or down, because it's going to be this event handler for our bitmap images. But we're going to actually truncate it down to this part. We're going to drop off the hashtag all the way to the period, and that's what we're going to do with this local variable called button handle or butt handle equals, and then word, the $sign. So this is a function for Liberty Basic. So we're actually going to pass in handle, our whole handle. We're going to take the second word out of that, and that'll be after the delimiter period. So we're just going to get btn d4 up or btn d4 down. So that's all we're looking for. And then we need to go ahead and select the case. Oop. Need the space there, case, and I'll do end select. And don't forget, the case we want to select is our butt handle. And so case, and then this is going to be btn d4 up, and then we'll do case btn d4 down. I'm going to use our Intellisense. So if button up or button down is clicked on, do this. So what are we going to do? We're going to go ahead, and as long as we're not over 99, we're going to increase the number in that text box. So we need to do a check. So we got to use an if statement. So if D4 count is less than 99, then let's increment it. So D4 count equals D4 count plus 1. So as long as we're not, as long as we're less than 99, let's go ahead and add 1 to our D4 count. And then we want to make sure we see that on the screen live. So this is where we want to go ahead and say DR, and then this is going to be our text box D4. And then we actually want to pass it D4 count. So that way we update that count. So let's save this and run it so we can look at it, and let's make sure our up button works, which it does. Now we're incrementing the number of dice. Awesome. So now let's go ahead and basically, as I call it, wire up the left hand. So this is going to be the opposite. If D4 count is greater than 1, and I just want the space here. I try to keep things kind of clean if I can and organized. So as long as we're greater than 1, let's go ahead and subtract 1 from D4 count. So D4 count is minus 1. And then we have to do the same thing. So we could, to save ourselves, we can copy this code. Now remember what I said when copying code when copying code, we really want to make sure that we grab everything that we're looking for and modify it as needed, because we don't want to create bugs by copying and pasting. And a lot of bugs are created by copying and pasting. They really are. I've seen it. You know, I've seen it more than once, so just be careful of that. You know, we don't want to go ahead and run into any issues. We want to keep everything nice and smooth if we can. And so let's go ahead and save this and run it. So you can see we can go up and we can go down. It doesn't go below 1. If we give up focus, we can use enter to go all the way up, so count really fast. So make sure we get the 99, which we do, perfect. And then clicking down, we'll give the down bitmap button focus, hold down enter, and we don't go below 1, so that's perfect. That's wired up perfectly. So that's our event handler for our bitmap buttons. Now I'm going to put a space here just because I think it looks cleaner. And so our next subroutines are actually going to go ahead, and they're going to be for our checkbox set and our checkbox reset. And so that's going to be a little bit different because what happens is if we set it, we have to reset the other one. Or the control I want is if we set one, we need to reset the other. So let's swap them back and forth, right? And that's what we're going to go ahead and do. And so let's go ahead and start the subroutine for our set. So sub, and then basically this is going to be our checkbox set event handler. I'm going to pass a handle. Then this will be end sub. And what we'll go ahead and do is let's copy this local variable but handle, because this is going to be the same in our subroutines because it's local to this subroutine. So we'll tab over, paste it, and then let's go ahead and set up the parameters for our reset. So sub checkbox reset event handler handle, and because we already have it, we can paste it in, and then end sub. So now we have them both in there, so at least we can go ahead and work with them. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to work with our set first. And so we're going to select our case. So, whoop, not uppercase, lowercase. So but handle, I'm glad Intellisense is here. So end, select, and here I'll hit delete. I want to bring that up just one. And so the case for this is going to be the handle to our checkbox for set and reset. So if we look at it, let's do case. It's going to be checkbox D4 positive, and then this will be our checkbox D4 negative. So now that we have those in there, save, we should be able to basically check and uncheck. But right now you can see we can have positive and negative checked, which because we're doing a dice roller, we don't want that to happen. We don't want to have both of those checked. We either want to add the number to it or subtract the number from it. So we want to figure out, okay, what are we doing? Are we doing positive or negative? Or are we adding it or subtracting it from our total result that we get here? Because if this is a modifier, so if I roll a 1d4 plus 5, you know, and I roll a 3, that's an 8. Or if it's 1d4 minus 5, I roll a 4, that's a -1 or a -1. So we really want to make sure that only one of these are checked at a time. And that's what we're doing with this event handler here. So if I check positive, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that negative is unchecked. So DR, and this is going to be our checkbox D4 negative. And then what we're going to do is we're going to reset it. So if I check positive and negative is checked, I'm going to uncheck negative. And this, I'm going to do the opposite with the negative checkbox. So dr dot checkbox d4 positive, and we'll reset positive. So now let's go ahead and save this. Run it. If I check positive, now I check negative, negative unchecks positive, and vice versa. Now we can only have one checkbox checked. So we can either add or subtract the roll and get our result. So that's what we're looking for. So that works perfect. And so now we have to look at, what does the reset handler do? So the reset handler is basically if both the boxes are unchecked. So if positive is unchecked and negative is unchecked, what do we want to do? And what we want to do is go ahead and set the value for our modifier to 0. So when you look, let's run it and look at it. So here's our modifier, right? So if I uncheck both of these, I no longer have a modifier that I'm adding or subtracting to the roll. So we want to set this box back to 0 or blank at this point, no value. And we do that by going into our reset event handler. And so let's go here. So select case, but handle, and select. And then what we're going to go ahead and do is basically this case is going to look at both. So it's going to look at checkbox D4 positive and checkbox D4 negative. So we're looking for both values. And if both values are unchecked, we reset our modifier. And so let's go ahead and look at, so we need to do basically hashtag dr dot, and then this is going to be our modifier checkbox, so text box D4 mod, and then we're just, comma, and then we're going to basically set it to a blank value. So let's save, run. So if I have 5 in here, check, 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 it doesn't change. But if I uncheck this, it works great. Now, because I can only have positive or negative checked, we really have to be careful what we're doing here, right? And what I mean by that is, okay, so we're checking, you know, positive or negative, but we really need to make sure that as we go through, if we weren't unchecking and, you know, we had multiple checkboxes, say in a different style program, we would have to figure out, okay, if all of them are unchecked, what do they do, not just the one. So because of the way we have it set up, we only have one checkbox. This is very clear. So hopefully that makes sense. This works for what we're doing with it. You may need to modify it to incorporate it into your programs that you're creating. So that's our reset event handler. So that works very well for us. So let me see, is there anything else that I want us to do in this lesson? I don't think so. I think that's kind of a good spot. So save, run. Let's go ahead. And what's nice is you guys look, our modifier, you might be saying, okay, we reset that text box, but basically, what about the value? Well, in our next lesson, when we do the random number generation, what we'll do is that modifier is only going to take what's in that checkbox. So that'll get assigned to the variable, the local variable that we create. So whatever that's set to. And we'll talk about that in that lesson. So here you can see we have our up down arrows working. Our modifier box still works. You know, we can subtract or add it to our roll. And in lesson 5, we're going to go ahead and basically create the code that wires up to our roll button and gives us a result. So I hope you guys really liked the video. If you do, please don't forget to hit the thumbs up button. And please don't forget to subscribe. Leave me any questions, comments in the feedback below. Hopefully you guys are really liking the series. And let me know if you guys need anything. See you in the next lesson.